All right, let's jump right in. Today we're taking a deep dive into Movavi's video editing suite. We've got a Spanish language YouTube review here that you sent over, and I'm pretty curious to see what we can pull out of it. It looks like the reviewers got their hands on Movavi Video Editor 2024 and their screen recording software, so we'll see how it all measures up.
Yeah, it looks like one of the things the reviewer really focuses on is Movavi wanting to be this complete platform. They're not just hitting the video editing, but they're talking about screen recording. They even get into audio editing and slideshow creation, all within this one suite.
So trying to be a one-stop shop for new creators, I mean, that's pretty ambitious. But does it actually deliver? What are the ups and downs of a company trying to do everything like that, especially for different skill levels?
Well, I think for people starting out, right, it's a pretty obvious draw. You can imagine, you open up Movavi and you've got everything there. You don't have to jump between programs. It could save a ton of time and maybe make it easier to get started. But on the other hand, if you're someone who's already comfortable with, let's say, a really good audio editor that you've used for a while, you might find yourself hitting some limits with what Movavi can do in that one area. And, you might actually end up spending more time trying to get used to a new way of working.
Yeah, so finding the right balance, right, between convenience on the one hand and also having enough control.
Exactly. And that balance probably changes as you get more experience, too. Something that felt really helpful and all-in-one at the start might actually start to feel a little, limiting once you've really developed your skills and you need more specialized stuff.
Makes sense. And of course, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, that whole freemium model. The reviewer mentions that, yeah, you can download Movavi for free, but then you're stuck with a watermark on your videos unless you actually go and subscribe. Feels like we're seeing this a lot these days, right? Get people hooked with the free version and then hope they pay to unlock the rest.
Yeah, definitely a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you get to try it out, see if you like it before you commit. The reviewer actually mentions that Movavi has a 7-day free trial to try the full version, which is pretty decent, actually. A lot of companies don't even do that anymore. But that watermark thing, yeah, it can be a real pain and kind of pushes you towards paying.
Yeah. And speaking of paying, let's talk about the specifics of what that actually looks like. So the reviewer breaks down the pricing, monthly and yearly subscriptions, pretty standard. But then there's this thing called perpetual licenses. Have you heard of those?
I have, yeah, they're pretty interesting. A perpetual license means you pay once and it's yours forever. It's becoming less common now that a lot of companies just want you on that subscription train, that recurring revenue.
Right. From a business standpoint, yeah, I get it. But I'm sure users really appreciate the option to buy outright and just, be done with it, no more monthly bills. The reviewer mentions that there's a combo deal they recommend, the screen recorder and video editor perpetual license, all for about $69.
That's worth keeping in mind, especially since this review really digs into using the screen recorder along with the editor. Actually, we should probably talk about some of those features because they seem pretty excited about what the screen recorder can do.
Yeah, they were raving about being able to record your webcam, your screen, or even both at the same time. Perfect for anyone making tutorials or online courses, I'd imagine. And the audio options, you can record system audio, mic audio, or both. So pretty flexible there.
Yeah, that flexibility is key. If you're working with different audio sources, you really need that control over what's being captured to make sure you've got a good quality recording at the end of it.
Totally. And they were going on and on about all the control you have over the recording area, resolution, even using your iPhone as a webcam.
Yeah.
Really making it work for people who might not have a ton of fancy equipment.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to this larger trend we're seeing, what they call prosumer tools. They're bridging the gap between that basic consumer level software and the really professional grade applications. It's like getting a taste of both worlds.
Right. You don't need a Hollywood budget to make something that looks really good. And then, of course, you take those recordings, bring them into the editor, and it sounds like the editor itself has a ton of features from what they showed. We're talking basic cutting, color adjustments, all the way up to picture-in-picture effects, even AI-powered background removal.
Yeah, sounds like a good mix of features for different levels. You've got the basics covered if you're just starting out, but then there's some more advanced stuff if you want to get creative. The reviewers seem to really like that it's drag and drop. They said it felt really intuitive and user-friendly.
Drag and drop is a lifesaver for beginners. I mean,
Yeah.
It just makes the whole process less scary, They also talked about being able to split audio and video tracks to edit them separately. That's pretty cool. Gives you a lot more flexibility.
That's one of those things you might not even think about when you're starting out. But once you get more comfortable with editing, being able to really fine-tune the audio and video separately is huge for getting that polished, professional look.
Yeah, like they're anticipating what you'll need as you get better,
Hmm.
which I think is really smart. Then there's all the fun stuff, animations, transitions. They've got a whole music and sound effects library built in, and you can even buy extra packs of filters and effects if you want.
That's interesting, offering those extra packs. I guess it's a way to let people try out some more without overwhelming them with too many choices at first. Plus, it's another way for Movavi to, keep the lights on beyond just selling the software itself.
Makes sense. And the whole time the reviewer's positioning Movavi is like super beginner friendly, really easy to use, lots of automation. But do the features they actually show back that up? Like, would a pro even consider using this?
That's a good question, and I think it gets at what we're really trying to understand here. Movavi seems to be all about making video editing accessible to anyone, no matter how much they know you know. You've got AI-powered features, that drag-and-drop interface. The whole thing just seems pretty streamlined. But for someone who edits video professionally, they might feel like Movavi just isn't deep enough, or that it doesn't have the specialized tools they need.
Right, so it's all about picking the right tool for the right job. Movavi might be great for quick social media stuff, or maybe simple tutorials. But if you're working on a big project, you might need something heavier.
Exactly. And that's where it becomes really important to know what you need as a creator. What matters most to you? What kind of stuff are you making? How much control do you need to have? These are all things worth thinking about as you're looking at different video editing options.
Great point. And you know what? This actually leads perfectly into our first, well, I guess we don't need to make it sound so formal, do we?
You're right. Let's keep it casual.
Okay, so just thinking about your own process, how do you approach things? Do you like these all-in-one solutions like Movavi, or do you prefer to have different tools for each job?
That's a great way to put it. And there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on how you like to work.
Exactly. It's just a starting point for people to think about as they're figuring things out. And I'm excited to see what else we uncover in this deep dive.
Picking up where we left off, the reviewer seemed pretty hyped about this thing called image in picture. Basically, it lets you overlay videos on top of each other, create picture-in-picture effects, things like that. They made it sound like a pretty powerful tool, especially for making tutorials or those reaction videos everyone's doing these days.
Oh, yeah. I can see how that would be useful.
Yeah.
Like you could have yourself reacting to a video in a little window while the main video plays.
Right.
Or even do a side-by-side comparison of two things. And when you combine that with the screen recording, the possibilities really open up.
Right. Imagine recording yourself walking someone through something on your computer, and you've got your face in a little box explaining things as you go. You could do it all right there in Movavi. Makes it really easy to make those how-to videos.
Almost sounds too good to be true. Speaking of things that sound impressive, the reviewer also mentioned Movavi's audio editing features. They talked about noise reduction, some kind of auto-correction thing, even adding echo effects. I'm curious, how do those stack up against, like, a dedicated audio editing program?
Well, it's important to remember that Movavi is first and foremost a video editing suite. So the audio tools they have are meant to work well with video editing, not necessarily to replace something like Audacity or Adobe Audition,
Right, so you gain the convenience of having everything in one place, but you might lose some of the fine-tuning capability.
Exactly. If you're doing something where the sound quality is super important, like music production or voiceovers for, professional projects, then yeah, a dedicated audio editor is probably worth the investment. But for most people making videos where audio is important, but it's not the only thing you're focused on, Movavi's tools seem pretty decent.
Yeah, especially since they have that library of royalty-free music and sound effects built right in. That can be a huge help for people who don't have the time or the money to find their own music. And then, on top of that, they have those extra filter and effect packs you can buy. Feels like they're trying to find that balance between appealing to beginners and still giving more experienced people some room to grow.
Yeah, it's a smart approach. They give you a solid base to start with, and then if you want to get fancy, you can add more as you go. Actually, this reminds me of something. How do you usually go about learning new software? Do you like to have someone holding your hand every step of the way, or do you just jump in and figure things out as you go?
That's a good question. It depends on the software, really,
Yeah.
and how comfortable I am with, like, the subject matter. Sometimes I need a little more guidance, especially if it's something totally new.
Yeah.
But other times I just want to dive in and start playing around, What about you?
I'm definitely more of a jump in and see what happens kind of guy. I like to get a feel for how the software works before I start digging into tutorials or reading manuals. But hey, sometimes you need those resources too. It's good to have them when you get stuck.
Absolutely. Speaking of getting your hands dirty, the reviewer actually shows off some of the more advanced stuff Movavi can do, like chroma keying. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, chroma keying is basically how they replace a specific color in a video. Usually it's a green screen or a blue screen, and then they put another image or video in its place.
Yeah, it's how they do all those crazy special effects in movies, like when you see actors in some fantastical world or standing in front of some breathtaking landscape, that's often chroma keying. And it used to be something only big budget productions could do, but now with software like Movavi, it's becoming a lot more accessible.
Yeah, they didn't go too deep into the technical details, but the reviewer seemed pretty impressed with how Movavi handles it. Makes you wonder how good these more accessible chroma keying tools can actually be.
Well, if you want it to look super seamless, you usually need good lighting, the right camera setup, and a lot of careful work in post-production. But even with a more basic setup, software like Movavi can still give you pretty decent results, especially with those AI-powered features helping out.
Well, yeah, speaking of AI, they also showed off Movavi's background removal tool, which uses AI to separate the person from the background automatically. Sounds like a game changer for anyone who wants to get that professional look without having to set up a green screen in their living room.
It definitely has potential, but I think it's important to be a little skeptical of AI features too. The technology is still developing, and it doesn't always work perfectly. It depends on a lot of things, like how complex the scene is, how good the footage is, stuff like that.
So it's not a magic bullet, basically. You still need to understand what it can and can't do
Yeah.
and be ready to do some tweaking yourself if you need to.
Right. It's a tool, not a miracle worker. And at the end of the day, the quality of your video still depends on you, your skills, and your artistic vision.
True enough. This actually brings up an interesting thought for our listeners. How do you feel about AI becoming more and more involved in creative work? Do you think it's a helpful tool, a potential threat, or somewhere in between?
It's a big question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. On one hand, AI can take care of those boring, repetitive tasks, which frees you up to focus on the creative stuff. But there's also the worry that if we rely on AI too much, everything will start to look and sound the same.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. It's all about finding that balance, using AI to enhance our creativity, not replace it entirely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a little less philosophical: pricing. The reviewer touched on the different options they have, monthly and yearly subscriptions, and then those perpetual licenses. What are the pros and cons of each?
Well, subscriptions have become super popular because they give the software company a steady income. And it lets users get access to the latest features and updates for a fixed price every month or year. But yeah, those payments can add up, and they might not make sense for everyone, especially if you only need the software for a short time or if you're on a tight budget.
Perpetual licenses, on the other hand, give you that feeling of ownership, right? Yeah. You buy it once, and it's yours. No more subscription fees to worry about. But then the downside is you might miss out on new features and updates.
True, but some companies will let you upgrade if you have a perpetual license, so you can buy the newer versions at a discount. It's like a trade-off. Do you want to save money, or do you want to always have the newest version?
And speaking of saving money, remember that bundle the reviewer mentioned? The screen recorder and video editor, perpetual license, for about $69.
Yeah, that seemed like a pretty good deal. It definitely makes Movavi more affordable, especially for people who aren't sure if they want to subscribe yet.
It shows they're serious about competing. They're not just going after the professionals. They're trying to get everyday people interested too. This actually makes me think, how much does price actually matter to you when you're looking at software?
Good question. I think for me, it depends on the software and how important it is to what I do. If it's something I'll use every single day, I'm probably willing to spend more to get the features and performance I need. But if it's something I only use once in a while, maybe I'll go with the cheaper option, even if it's not as fancy.
Makes sense. It's about finding that sweet spot between what you can afford and what you actually need.
Exactly. And sometimes that means making some compromises.
For sure. Let's go back to that whole idea of Movavi being beginner-friendly for a second. The reviewer really pushed that, talking about how easy and automated everything is. But they also showed some pretty advanced stuff, too. Can one piece of software really be good for both beginners and more experienced people, or will one group always feel left out?
It's a tough thing to pull off, that's for sure. Trying to make something that works for everyone often means trying to find a balance between keeping things simple and still having enough power for the pros. What feels intuitive and helpful to someone just starting out might feel really limiting to someone with more experience. And then the really powerful tools that the pros love might just scare away a beginner.
So how do you make something that works for everyone?
Well, I think it starts with really understanding who you're trying to reach, who's your audience, what are their problems, what are they trying to achieve.
Right, if you know who you're making it for, you can design the features and the way it works to fit their needs.
Exactly. And you can make the interface, how it looks and feels, really welcoming and easy to use. So beginners can learn without getting overwhelmed, but experienced users still have the control they need.
It's about making everyone feel good about using it, no matter their skill level.
Exactly. And it's about making them feel like they're part of a community where they can ask questions, share what they know, and learn from each other.
That's a good point, actually. Let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in software reviews, documentation, and support resources.
Yeah, that stuff can be really important, especially for beginners. Having good documentation, tutorials, and a community that can help you out can make a huge difference in how you experience the software.
Totally. It's about making sure people have what they need to succeed, whether that's step-by-step instructions, a place to find answers to common questions, or even just a team that's quick to respond if you need help.
It can make what could be a really frustrating experience into something fun and rewarding. And it helps people feel like they can really unlock the software's full potential and achieve what they set out to do.
It's about making people feel supported and part of something bigger. So this is a question for our listeners. How important are community and support resources to you? Do you like having tutorials, FAQs, and forums available, or do you prefer to figure things out on your own?
That's a good question to think about. For me, it depends on the software. If it's something I'm really struggling with, it's nice to know I can find help, that I'm not the only one who's run into this problem. It's also a great way to learn new things. Sometimes just seeing how someone else does something can really help you understand it better.
Yeah, and it's not just about getting help. It's about sharing what you know, too.
Yeah.
Helping other people could be just as rewarding.
It's all about creating a positive environment where everyone's learning together.
Okay, let's get back to one of Movavi's big selling points, the screen recording feature. The reviewer was really impressed with being able to record your webcam, your screen, or both at the same time, saying it was perfect for tutorials, presentations, all that stuff.
Yeah, screen recording has become so important these days, with so many people working from home, taking online classes, watching videos online.
Right, it's how we share what we know, how we teach, how we communicate.
The reviewer also mentioned that you can control things like the recording area, the resolution, and which audio sources you're using. So you have a lot of flexibility to make it work for you.
Yeah, and that whole thing about using your iPhone as a webcam, pretty clever.
It shows that they're really thinking about making things easy for people, giving them options.
And they seem to be doing a good job of appealing to a wide range of people, from beginners to more experienced creators, with that balance of simple and advanced features.
It makes you wonder, how important is screen recording to you? Do you find yourself using it a lot, like for making tutorials or recording presentations?
Definitely more and more these days.
Yeah.
I'm using it for all kinds of stuff, making quick tutorials for people at work, recording presentations for online conferences, even just capturing something funny from a video game to share with friends.
Yeah, it's a pretty versatile tool. You can use it for so many things.
Speaking of versatile tools, let's go back to the reviewer's walkthrough of Movavi's video editor. They showed off a bunch of features, from the basics like cutting and color adjustments to more advanced stuff like picture-in-picture and chroma keying. Makes you think that Movavi can handle more than just those simple projects.
Yeah, they seemed really impressed with the drag-and-drop interface, how easy and intuitive it was.
Which is so important for video editing software, especially if you're a beginner. You don't want to get bogged down in a complicated interface.
A drag-and-drop interface makes things so much simpler, You can just grab the video clips, audio tracks, whatever you need, and arrange them how you want.
Exactly, and it makes the whole editing process a lot more fun and less time-consuming.
The reviewer also mentioned that you can split the audio and video tracks to edit them separately. That gives you a lot more control over your project.
Yeah, if you want to really fine-tune the audio and video, add effects, adjust the timing, or create those smooth transitions, that's really helpful.
It's how you get that professional polish.
It shows that Movavi is really trying to give people the tools they need to make high-quality videos.
They also showed off some of those more advanced features, like picture-in-picture and chroma keying, which means you can do some pretty complex stuff with Movavi.
Yeah, those features let you get really creative with your videos, bring in different video sources, add special effects, and experiment with different techniques.
It opens up a lot of possibilities. You can make more sophisticated and engaging videos.
And it shows that Movavi is trying to cater to people with different levels of experience, from beginners to those who want to get really serious about their video editing.
It's that balance of simplicity and power, giving people the tools they need to grow their skills and take their videos to the next level. Makes me wonder, how important are those advanced editing features to you?
Hmm. It really depends on the project. Sometimes I just need to do some basic editing, cut some clips, trim things down, add a few simple transitions. But then other times I want to get more experimental, try things like picture-in-picture, chroma keying, or some cool special effects. It's good to have the options to be able to use those features when you need them.
Yeah, that's a great approach. Be adaptable, use the right tool for the job.
Speaking of tools, let's talk about some of the specific things the reviewer mentioned about Movavi's editor. They talked about having a library of stock music and sound effects built right in, which is super helpful for people who don't have the time or the budget to go out and license music.
Yeah, having access to royalty-free music and sound effects can really make your videos better. It's a great thing to have, especially if you're just starting out.
Definitely, it saves so much time and hassle.
It lets you focus on telling your story without getting bogged down in finding the right music.
They also mentioned that you can buy extra packs of filters and effects. It seems like they're trying to give people who want more options a way to get them.
It's smart. They give you the basics, and then if you want to get fancy, you can add more later.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for video editing. You start with the basics, and then you can explore different paths as you get more comfortable.
And that's what I'm taking away from this whole deep dive, really.
Huh?
Movavi is all about giving people the power to create no matter where they are in their journey. They're creating an environment where you can learn, experiment, and make videos at your own pace.
And they're always evolving, adding new features and stuff to keep up with how quickly things are changing in the world of video creation.
Exactly. So this is a question for our listeners. How important is it to you that the software you use is always evolving? Do you like having regular updates, new features, all that? Or do you prefer a platform that's more stable that doesn't change too much?
Good question. For me, it depends on how important the software is to what I do. If it's something I use every day, I like knowing that it's getting updated and improved regularly. But if it's something I only use once in a while, I'm not as worried about having the latest and greatest features. What about you?
I like software that's actively being worked on. It shows that the developers care about it and that they're listening to what people are saying. But I get the appeal of a stable platform too, especially if it's something really important to your work and you need to know that it's going to be reliable.
It's all about finding that balance between new and exciting features and that sense of reliability.
And at the end of the day, it comes down to what works best for you.
Speaking of what works best, let's talk about Movavi's pricing model again and those perpetual licenses they offer.
Yeah, those perpetual licenses are becoming less common, but they offer a different way to pay compared to subscriptions. You pay once, and you own the software. No more monthly or yearly fees.
Which can be really appealing, especially if you're watching your budget or if you only need the software for a short time.
But it's good to keep in mind that you might not get all the new features and updates that people with subscriptions get.
Right, but some companies, like Movavi, will give you a discount if you want to upgrade to a newer version later on.
So you have to decide, save money now or have access to the newest stuff later.
And remember that bundle the reviewer mentioned? Screen recorder and video editor, perpetual license for about $69.
Yeah, that's a really good price. It shows that Movavi is trying to make its software affordable for everyone, even if you're not sure about committing to a subscription.
It's a good way to get people to try it out without spending a lot of money.
Makes you wonder, how much does price matter to you when you're looking at software?
It definitely matters, but it's not the only thing I look at. I also think about things like what features it has, how well it performs, how easy the interface is to use, and what kind of support they offer. It's about finding the right balance between getting your money's worth and making sure it fits your needs.
Totally. You want the best bang for your buck, but you also need software that helps you get your work done.
Sometimes that means spending a little more to get the features and performance you need. And sometimes it means finding a more affordable option that still gets the job done.
It's all about making smart choices that work with your budget and your goals.
Speaking of goals, let's circle back to Movavi's target audience and that whole beginner-friendly thing. The reviewer really focused on how easy and automated everything is, but then they also showed off some pretty advanced features like chroma keying and that AI background removal. It makes you wonder, can one piece of software really be good for both beginners and people with more experience, or will someone always feel left out?
That's a tough question. What feels intuitive and helpful to someone just starting out might feel really limiting to someone who knows what they're doing. And then the fancy tools that the pros love might just scare away a beginner.
So how do you make something that works for everyone?
I think you have to really understand the people you're making it for. Who are they? What are their problems? What are they trying to achieve?
Right, if you know your audience, you can make the features and the way it works to fit their needs.
Exactly. And you can make the interface how it looks and feels really welcoming and easy to understand. So beginners can learn without getting overwhelmed, and experienced users still have the control they need.
It's about making everyone feel good about using it, no matter their skill level.
Right. And it's about building a community where people feel comfortable asking questions, sharing what they know, and learning from each other.
That's a good point, actually. Let's talk about something that doesn't always get enough attention, the importance of documentation and support.
Yeah, those things can be a lifesaver, especially if you're new to the software. Having good documentation, tutorials, and a supportive community can make a big difference in how much you enjoy using the software.
Definitely. It's about making sure people have what they need to succeed, whether it's step-by-step guides, answers to common questions, or a team that's ready to help.
It can turn a frustrating experience into something really positive, and it helps people feel like they can unlock the software's full potential and achieve their goals.
It's about giving people the support they need and making them feel like part of something bigger. And, this brings up another interesting point. How important are those community and support resources to you? Do you like having tutorials, FAQs, and forums to help you out, or do you prefer to figure things out yourself?
I think it depends. If I'm really struggling with something, it's definitely nice to know there are resources and people who can help. And it can be a great way to learn new techniques. Sometimes seeing how someone else does something can really help you understand it better.
And don't forget the other side of that. Sharing what you know can be really rewarding too.
Exactly. It's all about creating a positive environment where everyone is learning together.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about something that's become really important in the software world, social media.
Yeah, social media has a huge impact on how people perceive software and what they decide to buy. People are going to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all those places to research products, read reviews, and talk to other users.
And software companies are definitely taking notice. They're realizing how important it is to engage with people on social media, build relationships, and address concerns.
It's a two-way street. Companies can use social media to get feedback from users, find out what needs to be improved, and tell people about new features.
And users can use social media to connect with each other, share tips and tricks, and get help if they're having problems.
It's a win-win situation for everyone.
Speaking of wins, let's go back to that bundle deal the reviewer was talking about. The screen recorder and video editor, perpetual license, for around $69. It seems like Movavi is really trying to make its software affordable for everyone.
Yeah, that's a really competitive price, especially when you consider everything those two programs can do. It shows that they're not just going after the big spenders. They want everyday creators and hobbyists to use their software too. It makes me think about how many different video editing programs there are these days. You've got everything from free open source software to professional grade applications that cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars.
Kind of overwhelming, to be honest. How do you even know where to start when there's so many options?
I think the key is to figure out what you want to achieve and what's important to you. What kind of videos are you making? What features do you absolutely need? How much can you spend? Once you know what you're looking for, you can start comparing different programs based on things like features, performance, how easy they are to use, and of course, price.
And don't forget about things like community support and whether you actually enjoy using the software.
Right. Those things can be just as important as the technical stuff.
Speaking of enjoying the software, let's talk about that whole beginner-friendly thing again. The reviewer was all about how easy and automated Movavi is, but then they also showed some pretty advanced features, like chroma keying and that AI background removal. Can one program really be good for both beginners and more experienced users? Or will someone always feel like they're missing out?
It's a tough question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. What's easy and intuitive for someone just starting out might feel really limiting to someone who's been editing videos for a while. And the really powerful tools that professionals love might just be too complicated for a beginner.
So how do you find that balance?
It all starts with understanding who you're making the software for. Who are they? What are their challenges? What are they trying to achieve?
Right. If you know your audience, you can design the features and the way everything works to fit their needs.
Exactly, and you can make the interface how it looks and feels really welcoming and easy to understand. So beginners can learn without getting overwhelmed, and experienced users still have the control they need.
It's about making everyone feel comfortable and empowered, no matter how much experience they have.
And it's about building a community where people feel supported and can learn from each other.
Speaking of learning, let's talk about documentation and support again. Having good documentation, tutorials, and a helpful community can make a huge difference in how much you enjoy using the software.
Especially if you're new to it, it's about making sure people have what they need to succeed. Whether it's step-by-step instructions, a place to get answers to their questions, or a responsive support team. It can make what could be a frustrating experience into something really enjoyable. And it helps people feel like they can unlock the software's full potential and achieve their goals.
It's about giving people the support they need and making them feel like part of something bigger. This brings up another interesting point. How important are those community and support resources to you? Do you like having tutorials, FAQs, and forums to help you out, or do you prefer to figure things out yourself?
I think it depends. If I'm really struggling with something, it's definitely nice to know that there are resources and people who can help. And it can be a great way to learn new techniques. Sometimes seeing how someone else does something can really help you understand it better.
And don't forget the other side of that. Sharing what you know can be really rewarding too.
Exactly. It's all about creating a positive environment where everyone is learning together.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about something that's become really important in the software world, social media.
Yeah, social media has a huge impact on how people perceive software and what they decide to buy. People are going to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all those places to research products, read reviews, and talk to other users.
And software companies are definitely taking notice. They're realizing how important it is to engage with people on social media, build relationships, and address concerns.
It's a two-way street. Companies can use social media to get feedback from users, find out what needs to be improved, and tell people about new features.
And users can use social media to connect with each other, share tips and tricks, and get help if they're having problems.
It's a win-win situation for everyone.
Speaking of wins, let's go back to that bundle deal the reviewer was talking about. The screen recorder and video editor, perpetual license, for around $69. It seems like Movavi is really trying to make its software accessible to a wide range of users.
Absolutely. That price is really competitive, especially when you consider everything you get with those two programs. It shows that Movavi isn't just going after professionals with a lot of money to spend. They want to attract everyday creators and people who are just starting out too. It really makes you think about how many choices there are for video editing software these days. There's everything from free software to programs that cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to choose when there are so many options out there?
I think it starts with figuring out what you want to do and what's important to you. What kind of videos are you making? What features do you absolutely need? What's your budget? Once you know the answers to those questions, you can start narrowing down your options and comparing different programs based on things like what features they have, how well they perform, how easy they are to use, and, of course, the price.
And don't forget those less obvious things, like whether the software has a good community and support system and whether you actually enjoy using it.
Right, those things can be just as important as the technical details.
Speaking of enjoying the software, let's go back to that whole beginner-friendly thing again. The reviewer really emphasized how easy and automated Movavi is. But they also showed some pretty advanced features like chroma keying and that AI background removal. Can one program really be good for both beginners and more experienced users? Or will one group always feel like they're missing out?
It's a tough challenge for any software company, trying to appeal to everyone. What seems intuitive and helpful to a beginner might feel limiting to someone who's been doing this for a while, and all the fancy tools that attract experienced users might just scare away someone who's just starting out.
So how do you find that balance?
I think it starts with understanding who you're making the software for. Who are they? What are their struggles? What are they hoping to achieve?
Right. Once you understand your audience, you can design the features and how everything works to meet their needs.
Exactly. And you can create an interface, how the program looks and feels that's both welcoming and powerful. So beginners can learn without feeling overwhelmed, and experienced users still have the control they need.
It's about making the software a positive experience for everyone, regardless of their skill level.
And it's about building a community where people can support each other and learn from each other.
Speaking of learning, we talked earlier about the importance of documentation and support resources.
Yeah, those things can really make a difference, especially if you're new to the software. Having good documentation, tutorials, and a supportive community can make using the software so much more enjoyable.
Totally. It's about giving people the tools they need to succeed, whether that's step-by-step instructions, answers to their questions, or a team that's ready to help.
It can take a potentially frustrating experience and turn it into something really positive. And it helps people feel like they can really unlock the software's potential and achieve their goals.
It's about giving people the support they need and making them feel like part of something bigger. This makes me think about another aspect of software that's become really important: social media.
Yeah, social media has a huge impact on how people perceive software and what they ultimately decide to buy. People are turning to places like YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook to research products, share their experiences, and connect with other users.
And software companies are definitely paying attention. They're realizing how important it is to engage with people on social media, build relationships, and address concerns.
It's a two-way street. Companies can use social media to get valuable feedback from users, see what needs to be improved, and let people know about new features.
And users can use social media to connect with each other, share tips and tricks, and get help if they're having problems.
It's a win-win situation.
Speaking of wins, remember that bundle the reviewer was talking about? The screen recorder and video editor perpetual license for about $69. Yeah, it's pretty wild how much the lines are blurring between like consumer software and the stuff professionals use.
I know, right? It feels like it's happening everywhere. In music, photography, design. Tools that you used to need a studio for are now available to, well, anyone with a computer.
And that's got to be so exciting for people who are just getting started, right? Like it's opening up so many doors.
Absolutely. It's like putting the power to create in everyone's hands. You don't need a ton of money or fancy training anymore. If you've got a story to tell, you can tell it.
And that brings us right back to Movavi, doesn't it? This whole idea of making video editing accessible to everyone. It seems like they're really trying to find that sweet spot between making things easy for beginners, but still giving experienced creators the tools they need.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance to strike, trying to appeal to a wide audience without leaving anyone out in the cold.
And from what we've seen in this review, it seems like they're doing a pretty good job so far.
The reviewers seemed genuinely impressed with what Movavi could do. They were talking about how easy it was to use, but also how many features it had.
And they were really excited about that screen recording feature. That seemed to be a big selling point for them.
Yeah, and they actually showed off some of the more advanced editing tools too, which tells me that Movavi isn't just for making quick slideshows or basic tutorials.
Right, you can actually do some pretty complex stuff with it. Experiment with different techniques, really get creative.
It seems like they want people to push the boundaries of what's possible with video editing to really explore their ideas.
And that's really what it's all about, right? Giving people the tools they need to express themselves and share their vision with the world.
Exactly, and making those tools affordable and easy to use so that anyone can find their voice.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up. This has been a really interesting look at Movavi and how the world of video editing is changing.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today, from those all-in-one solutions to the role of AI in creative work.
And we've talked about some important questions, like finding the balance between convenience and control, what makes software truly affordable, and the value of community and support.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of Movavi and where it fits in with all the other video editing tools out there.
And maybe, just maybe, it sparks some ideas for your own creative projects.
Remember, the best software is the software that helps you tell your story.
So go out there and create something amazing.
And until next time, happy editing.